Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast. I'm here with Jason from Toronto, and we're going to talk today about his experiences on the Mandarin Blueprint Method course, but also why it is that he decided to learn Chinese and what he hopes to do with it. So, Jason, tell me a little bit about yourself, and maybe some of the things that led you to want to start to learn Mandarin.
For sure, yeah, and first of all, Phil, it's great to be on here. I just started the course about a month and a half ago, or maybe almost 2 months, and it's amazing how far I've gotten, and to even just get to this point where I can start to share my experience with other people. So it's amazing. But I started the interest to learn Mandarin really sparked during the winter break of this year, so about 6 months ago. But there I was still in a position of, okay, well, it's more of just I'm teasing with the thought. I don't really have a dedicated plan to go about it. It's more so just something that appealed to me. I traveled to China a couple of years ago, mainland China, with a friend who thankfully is from Shanghai, so she was my translator. But we went throughout. We went from the main city. We went inland to Yunnan province, and then up to Beijing. So we went around. But of course, I was completely unfamiliar with the language. But I feel part of the experience there kind of triggered the interest within me because I myself am half Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half Cantonese, so different kind of language background altogether, but Chinese nonetheless. So I think it's kind of that obligatory kind of a requirement to at least tap a bit more into my heritage there on that front.
Sure.
So fast forward to when I started to get the interest about half a year ago, maybe January. All I did was just buy a book, and within the book, it was very kind of structured in terms of very thematic. It was each chapter was okay, we're going to observe how Mandarin works in introduction, and then apologies, and then greeting people, and then day in the life kind of setting, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. Kind of that role play element, but for me, my learning style is not congruent with that at all. My learning style is very methodical, ground up building. I ask a lot of whys. I'm very analytical in that sense.
Sure.
And therefore, it just didn't work with me. It didn't jive with my learning style because, yeah, they're teaching me a language, they're teaching me words, but I need to start with the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, it was very fast to decelerate. And I just kind of gave up on that, work got busy, whatever. So then I finally caught a breath with work. I had more free time, and then I just came along Mandarin Blueprint. Forgive me, I forget exactly how I came across it.
No
Probably
problem.
somewhere on social media, some direct marketing there. But it caught my attention, and I browsed a bit, and I looked at it, and first thought was, okay, well, it's gotten some really good reviews. The entire system seems to be pretty sophisticated. The testimonial video, it seems to be promising to deliver a really good kind of technique there. And the whole idea of the ground up approach, which I mentioned is my learning style, really appealed to me. And then what caught on from that initial video I saw was the mention of mnemonic visualization techniques. And right away that struck a chord because I'm a very visual learner. And I always have vision going on in my mind, not vision, but I always have some sort of visual thing going on in my mind in my other day-to-day life. And I feel that's kind of a really strong way for me to learn. So I started learning. I tapped into pronunciation mastery from day one, which was maybe mid-May, I believe, when I first signed up, and I got through that for 3 weeks, throughout 3 weeks, and then right after I hit the foundation course, and since then I've just been learning characters. But it's been great to really take it strong, because I feel in my other kind of attempts to learn languages, it's just if you're self-teaching, you really need a way to keep you devoted to it, and a
Mm-hmm.
real strong incentive to keep going, to anchor you in. Because if you don't have the discipline, it's very easy to waver. So but the thing that kept me disciplined is how amazingly captivating it is, and just enjoyable to do. And I've seen that throughout the course. You guys kind of pitch it as something where it shouldn't be a chore, it should be something you enjoy to do. And because you see the results so fast, you see the progress, and it's really a strong output that's immediate, rather than having to invest months before you can actually notice some good output.
Hmm.
because even with pronunciation, like I was already noticing my pronunciation improving, and I have a good amount of Chinese speaking friends that I was able to practice on, and they're all like, "Whoa, your pronunciation is so spot on, so native." Some of the more critical ones were, still critical, but the
Sure.
majority of my Chinese friends were
Good.
really complimentary of it. Yeah, and that was definitely really good positive reinforcement there. And then that was kind of my journey throughout the pronunciation mastery course. And then right when I started learning characters, it just stuck. Like the Hanzi movie method, it took me a couple days to like warm up to it, of course. But
Sure.
once I got it going, it just became second nature. And learning characters, it's just I kind of got into the mindset of, okay, well, I'm looking forward to my study or review session tonight, and I want to just challenge myself to learn X number of characters today, and then I've been trying to kind of use those to confirm that I acquire some language, because I can talk to some my Chinese friend and use my Chinese keyboard to kind of just show that I've learned. Like the other day, I was just talking to my mom's my friend's mom, who doesn't speak any English, but now that I know basic Mandarin, I talk to her every few days, just
Nice.
to kind of prove that we can make a connection now. So it's really coming along, really really great. I'm loving it.
Nice, nice. So tell me a little bit about, like, let's project into the future and suppose that you're speaking Mandarin well, you're reading Mandarin well. What's your plan? What are you going to do with that new skill? I mean, obviously, there may be. I imagine there will be things that you haven't thought of yet. But what are your goals with the ability to speak Mandarin?
Right. And I think that's a really good question, because it kind of forces me to actually think about that. But I feel a lot of it has been just to kind of continue with the interest. But I do think I have some kind of idea down the road, and ultimately, I probably would love to go back to China to kind of just do it again. Take two, but this time actually be able to immerse myself a bit more. Because I did
Mhm.
I did say earlier, I did travel to China. It was a couple of weeks of a trip, but this time if I go back and I'm at least conversational to some degree, it's gonna drastically improve my experience. I think that would be a big thing. And secondly, just to round myself out as a person. I did mention I'm half Chinese, so I feel if I'm able to kind of speak that language or one of the dialects, I it just just for self improvement, self development, which is super important to me as well.
Sure. Well, I think that the combination of sort of natural interest in the language, obviously you're also connecting with your heritage and that type of thing, but there's also just the general, like, when it comes to preparing for the future, sometimes the more specific your goals get, the more unrealistic they are, because it's kind of like uh life brings in so many new challenges and variables that you weren't predicting. But the key is
Yeah,
just be prepared for it. So it's like, if you know Chinese 5 years from now, who knows what you'll be doing, but like, you'll have Chinese, so you'll be more prepared for a number of different things that could happen that you otherwise wouldn't
yeah.
be. So it sounds like you've got a good head in your shoulders about that. So that's fantastic. So
Thank you.
let's talk a little bit more about the course then. So you talked about you've done pronunciation mastery and you've gone through at least the first two phases of the Mandarin Blueprint Method course, which is why we do these case studies at this point. We'd like to check back in with you when you're finished with the foundation course, and see how you're doing. But as of now, let's talk about the character method for a moment, because that's obviously the thing that is weird for a lot of people when they first hear about it. So, um, in terms of the number of characters, like, say, 10 characters in, 20 characters in, 30 characters in, how long do you think it was before you felt confident that you understood the steps of the method and how to go from knowing nothing about a character to memorizing it?
I think in order or the time it took to become comfortable with the movie method as a whole, was maybe 50 characters in,
Hmm.
maybe halfway there. Because I remember I was probably at character 50 or 60. And when I started to realize, like, okay, I feel like I don't have to watch the entire video now at this point. I can kind of skim, I go for the main points, like look at for the keyword connection, just to,
Hmm.
immediately help me get a keyword connection, and kind of maybe jump to the end when you talk about special effects. But like in the middle, I felt I didn't it was kind of a bit inefficient at that point, because I knew my props, I knew my set, my actors. But it's obviously great for just having your arsenal. But around character 50, I felt much more confident, and it just became second nature. And even like earlier today, I was like, not even earlier today, just like before the call, I was just learning a few more. And I immediately I created a character in like 30, 45 seconds, just right when I see the actor, the set, I immediately put them there, and I see the props, I see the main keyword connection. I immediately start with the keyword connection and just work backwards. And the best scenarios when your props just are so compatible with the keyword connection and the movie makes itself.
Yeah. Which
So
happens
like,
more often than you think, because it's not an accident that the individual character components are for that character, because the meaning and the character components meanings often are related. So
yeah, yeah,
that's one of those things that people don't
yeah,
really realize until they've done it a little bit, and they're like, "Oh, wait, this is the perfect prop for this," and it's like, "Yep, that's
yeah.
intentional."
Yeah, like the more props you have, it just builds you up for more success. So you say
Exactly.
it a bunch of times as well, just accelerates as you go further. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
mhm.
So you've started off in phase 3, I believe. So what level are you in now?
Level 13. I'm on character 108, 109 ish. I
Oh, okay.
just
So you've
learned each
just
other. I
started.
think Shong. Yeah,
Yeah. You
or
just started
yeah,
the
Shong. Yeah,
sentences then. Okay, cool. Well, then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we'll leave that for now, because that's going to take a little bit longer to have a sense of. So we'll leave that, because at phase 3, that's when we introduce the sentence layer. So you've learned 105 characters at least, and
Hmm.
about 60 words or so, 2-character words. And so at that point, it's reasonable to
Hmm.
put together some sentences. And what you'll see is that some of the sentences are kind of like, why would somebody say this? But it's just a matter of the limited vocabulary that you have. They're all grammatically correct. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
build that grammar module, which is, you really want to build grammar through just comprehensible input. And then if we have grammar lessons that you'll see, and they kind of point out things to you, but it's always about just keeping that input going. So soon you'll have a lot more of that going. So, okay.
Great.
Now, how about the experience of I'm curious what you think about the community aspect of the course, and I'm kind of including everything in that. I'm including the community forum, all of the comments that are below the lessons, because this is something that is developed a bit more than Luke or I expected. And so, what has your
Hmm.
experience been of this sort of social element / community element of the course?
The social aspect and community aspect. I mean, I feel it's in a league of its own compared to just other things out there. Like it's such a self-prophesizing, self-fueling, like community building learning platform. In addition to the content you already have, I learn still from the content that's created by the community. For
Mm,
example, in the comments of the videos, I get a lot of value and I leverage a lot off of prop suggestions, for example, or set
yeah.
suggestions. Sets were the hardest part for me. I'm glad I got all 13 out of the way, but just my lived experiences, I felt even though they're only 13, it was very hard for me to think of sets sometimes. So I went to the comments for those recommendations and props as well. And sometimes I just feel like I don't want to put in a lot of thought for props. I just browse the comments of what
Mhm.
people suggest, and a lot of them just trigger right away. Then I'm like, wow, that's genius, and I would never have thought about that if it weren't for the comments. So that's a great
Yeah.
thing about that kind of community sharing, crowdsourcing idea for props. And then I mean, kind of goes without saying, but what I love is that I ask a lot of questions, and I'm very analytical and inquisitive. So I have asked a lot of questions in the comments below, and I love how they get responded so fast too. Like the timing of your guys' responses is extremely impressive. So that has helped tremendously in just kind of getting that more live time feedback and answer stream, rather than putting a question out there and it going dark and never getting an answer. So
Yeah.
I love that. And in conjunction with obviously the podcast, it's always kind of exciting when I ask a question and then I know the time difference, because you guys usually respond to it like 11 p.m. when I'm in bed, and then it says, "Oh, like your answer has been, or your question has been answered," or "Here's where looking to discuss in the podcast." I'm like, yes, now I can kind of like tap into that and tune in and see kind of their response there.
Yeah.
So it all comes together really well. And then the forum is a nice place to kind of ask those general questions, which I've taken advantage of in terms of like study methods and things like that aren't specific to a certain video. But all in all, like the community base is the premium that we get with this, and I definitely would include that as a huge selling feature to the overall MB service.
Yeah, it's been such a delightful surprise from our perspective. You know, my girlfriend says that she says that it's like MB is they're the kids. I got to go check on the kids, and like it's obviously not. You know, it's just sort of like, you know, what is everybody saying? Let me make sure I'm providing enough for everybody. But
It's a
it's a
lot of
pleasure.
kids.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, what did the kids say while I was asleep last night, and just go check on them and see. But
Are they
no,
behaving?
I really enjoy it because it's great to see what, you know, because we're curriculum creators, right? So we're like, when we see what people are giving the feedback on and what works, you know, I just check because we categorize all our comments, and one of the we've had over 1,500 prop suggestions now, which is just, it's so cool that that's the case, because that
It's a
means that,
lot.
you know, that's, you know, we learned from a book called Remembering the Simplified Hanzi by James Heisig, which is you know, it's like the Hansa movie method in its nascent form. Like the Hansa movie method has a lot more to it, but one of the reasons why is because it's constantly updating. It's like updating every day, and so that's the kind of thing that it's like a book. You know, a book's a book. Whatever James Heisig wrote in
Yeah.
there as the suggestion for a representation of a character component, that's what it is. And a lot of times he suggested things that made Luke and I go, I don't even know what this is, because he's you know, he's a boomer, so what does he know?
All right, boomer.
Okay, boomer Isaac. I love James
All
Isaac,
right.
greatest. But how about skepticism? So like obviously our course is weird and it's not traditional. So
Yes.
was there anything that you
No.
were kind of skeptical about? It sounds like you did have some notion of mnemonic techniques, so maybe you weren't skeptical of mnemonics as such, but like when you first got into it, was there anything that you were skeptical about?
No, that's right. I was never skeptical of the mnemonics, and I've used mnemonics in my in other aspects of life when it comes to like coming up with abbreviations or memory hooks, things like that, or acronyms to remember things. If I were to be like skeptical of anything, I think like just naturally it would just been skeptical of the movie itself because it
Mhm.
kind of like the movie HMM. Kind of goes hand in hand with what I mentioned earlier about me being very analytical and having to really understand the basis of something. So being introduced to this completely foreign idea with no clue what props meant and actors and sets and how they came together to like just teach me darning Mandarin. Like, why is there a movie method here? And it kind of overwhelmed me, to be honest, for a bit. You know, the first few hours, and but I did my reading. I read through all your Google Docs
Mhm.
just to kind of get that background. And when I read through that, it was still a bit confusing, but it still assured me that it would make sense if I just kind of started and broke ground a bit and just saw where it goes. So
Yeah.
I would say I was skeptical kind of early on, but throughout the rest of the course, no, I feel I was very much kind of calm throughout.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you know, you've got the, because I mean when you want to feel when you're doing this type of thing is relaxed at ease and kind of like just enjoying yourself. And if it, I always feel like if
Hmm.
at any point you start to feel stressed, then there's two things. Like one, if you start to feel stressed with like say the sentences or the grammar, then I just say, okay, we'll focus on some characters for a little while. People very rarely feel that stressed about it because you get to go like play in your imagination land. So like what's so
Yeah.
stressful about that? But you know, whenever that happens, it's just like, all right, just either take a breather or move on to something else. And then like the more sort of techniques you put into your arsenal, the easier it is to flip between things that fit your mood. So like, because so much of study is about like just trying to still get some kind of progress, even if you're in your various different moods. So like, for example, you're feeling not particularly motivated or focused, but you're willing to have the Chinese dub of Lord of the Rings on in the background. So you can occasionally catch a few things that here or there that you don't need your full attention, but it's still giving you giving you sound that is going to help your you know, help you towards your goals. And then or you're feeling really focused, okay, so now you want to focus on learning some new sentences or reading a bunch of sentences or doing your Anki flashcards or whatever. You know, all that stuff is definitely these are techniques you'll keep developing as you move forward
Hmm.
as a yeah,
Agreed.
and they tend to be applicable to more than just Chinese learning as well, which is great. Certainly has
Hmm.
helped me
Hmm.
in new things I've tried to learn since Chinese.
Yeah.
um, how about how we could improve the course? We're always looking to improve. I mean, obviously, we wish we had our own app and could use something other than Anki to review, but you know, that's obviously a big scale thing that one day we'll fix. But anything in terms
Hmm.
of like the flow of the course, or you know, otherwise
Hmm.
suggestions for how we could improve?
I think one of the things I've kind of noticed is like I think what is amazing, and it kind of came up earlier. It's taking the crowdsourced knowledge to kind of the next level, and for example, with all these props, you said you accumulate over 1,500. It's like, okay, that's great. They're all kind of scattered throughout the course. It'll be great if there's kind of like a repository that just amalgamated all of them, so you can kind of just like see, okay, like we know in every level review there's the tracker of progress for all the props, and it'll be great, to have a little interactive thing that says, okay, with the razor blade props at the top of my head, here are all the other suggestions that came with it and things like
Right.
that, just to kind of see like, it is big and there's a lot of resource built behind this, just the grand
Mhm.
scale of things. And then another one I did think of was it's kind of something that I've had kind of self-reflecting question about is, am I moving at a kind of a comparable pace to other people in terms of,
Oh, yeah.
I'm at level 110. I think June 7th was when I started the foundation, so just over
Mhm.
a month. Okay, it feels good, but is that average, compared to like a little rubric thing? So maybe it would be nice to see, if people could kind of contribute just approximately how long they've been learning it for, how many characters they've learned, approximately the average rate per day or week or something, and combine that data, and then just kind of have a little visual on the part of the
Mm.
site that kind of says like, here's where you might stand, or kind of for existing students, like here's where you currently
Right.
stand, how do you rate, and then also to prospective students, like here's the true progress you can make, because that, I think, at least in my perspective, that's ultimately what interests someone whether or not to buy a product. Like, how effective is it? You do
Sure.
do a good job at showing that it's effective through your videos, but like an actual measurable output is like, here's our
Right.
students, like average they can get through our course of like within a year, like in a month you can learn like 50 to 100 characters on average based on proven historical records. So that's a
Mhm.
good visual for both a student, someone who's not enrolled, or myself who is enrolled and can see live time every week, how I'm faring against the average.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of for how to we do have some reports on progress that we can look up on our back end, and so see who is at various stages of different courses. Something that's a little bit frustrating about it is that if you choose, say, to skip the bonus lessons or whatever, which is totally fine, and we don't have any problem with that, it won't like register as progress. Although for if anybody
Yeah.
wants to skip those, just hit mark as complete, and then you'll see. Then you'll still see the
Yeah. I know what
progress
you
bar.
mean. I know what you mean.
But yeah, yeah. Awesome. That's a great suggestion. Maybe we could make a post in the community forum once a week or something, just saying like, here's the
Hmm.
new people who have made it into intermediate or whatever. As for the timing, it's a bit that's trickier because obviously everybody's different. They're gonna have different times per day that they can spend on it. But I can say that 5 weeks, or yeah, 4 or 5 weeks from June 7th to be where you are now is that's good because that's the hardest part for the in terms of speed of like how many characters do you cover in a 5 week period. Sure, in a 5 week period covering 110 characters kind of sounds okay, but you've set up your um the method now, so you should be able to in the next 5 weeks cover far more than that. Or even if you cover the same amount of characters, it of course comes with way more content because you've got all of the grammar building stuff that you're going to start doing in phase three. But my prediction is that over the next 5 weeks, you'll probably, maybe do twice the amount of characters because you're going to be able to not have to focus so much time on the how the method works side of it. So
Right. I
yeah.
thought of that too, and I agree. My qualm though there is, now that I just started doing sentences, will that be hindering me?
Well, I mean, hindering
Simultaneously.
maybe your overall speed to finishing the foundation course, but on the other hand, it's like it's stuff you got to know. There's no like you
Right.
can't
Right.
avoid it. You
Right.
got to learn you got to see a lot of sentences before you can kind of
Yes.
acquire that grammar. So, all right. Well, then the final question I have for you, Jason, is just if imagine I'm a person who comes to you and says, Jason, I'm looking to learn Mandarin Chinese, and I sort of heard about these guys, Mandarin Blueprint. Should I do it? What would you say?
Hmm.
Worth it?
So I'll have to get back to you on that one. No, I'm kidding. I've already, like shown MB to many of my friends and colleagues already. because not just because I think they should learn it, but just to share how interesting the method is. Like, to a few of my Chinese speaking friends, I've actually shown them how I've used these prompts to learn characters, and they look at me like, "What are you talking about?" But I would definitely be a proponent and advocate for this, and like I already have. And if someone asked me whether or not they should do this, I would, go without thinking, 100%.
Fantastic, Jason. Well, thank you for taking the time today to chat about the course. And like I said before, we'll check in with you again at the end, or we'll send you an email anyway if you'd like to check in again after the foundation course. We'll be very curious to hear what you think after going through phases 3 through 5, and then of course, and then maybe even check in again when you're finished with the intermediate course. So lots of good stuff ahead. 谢谢你观看我们的这个视频. If you found this video valuable and you'd like us to help you reach fluency and literacy in Mandarin Chinese as fast as possible without all the headache of traditional learning methods, just head to mandarinblueprint.com to learn more. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell below to be notified every time we release a new video. And of course, 保重.